We now move to South Africa, where we will be speaking with Pretty Kubyane as we take on a very critical issue around food security, financial inclusion, and the role of the blockchain technology in all of this. Pretty good to have you join us on the program. Let me quickly point out some facts here. While Africa, right, holds more than 60% of the world's uncultivated arable land, the continent's share of global agricultural production remains low. Now, the agricultural productivity averages 300 to 500 kilogram per hectare, as compared to 2.5 tons per hectare in the United States, for example. Can you first give us a sense of how agriculture affects the various African economies?
Hi, Tony. Thank you for having me. There's three ways that the agriculture industry contributes to the African economy. The first one is job creation and sustenance. We have about 48% of our population relying on the agriculture. One, they live on sustenance farming, and the other way they work within the agricultural or food supply chain. And the second one is trade. We have about 39 million farmers in Africa. So it's a community of 33 million that are small-scale farmers, usually owned by families, and the remaining 6 million is commercial farmers. And lastly, we make about 15% of the GDP through the agricultural business across many African countries.
Okay, fantastic. Now, to what extent, all right, do centralized supply chains contribute or worsen the situation of, low agricultural productivity?
The disadvantage to that one is barriers to entry. When you look at the regulatory programs that exist, you can see they regulate small-scale farmers just outside the mainstream economy, and then they leave them on the side of being fragmented, the access to farming equipment and all of that. The second part is monopolies. Sometime this year, we compared notes with one of the mass food marketing retailers in South Africa, and he was taking us through how in the 70s there was bread wars. What happened is a group of mainstream bakers, they came together, raised the prices of bread, and got the government to penalize anybody whom in their retail they are not raising the prices. At that time, South African families really relied, bread was a staple diet. So conspiring on raising of prices meant that certain families can no longer afford to buy bread, and they could go home hungry. And the last part is violation of human rights. East Africa, for example, the farming of cocoa has been known to have a number of human rights violations, child labor, and closer to home in the southern Africa region, some of the wines that we enjoy, they've been known to pay their employees with a bottle of wine instead of paying them an average wage. And us as consumers, we are locked outside where we can't really see what happens within the supply chain. So we can't tell whether we are drinking an ethical wine or ethical coffee, where how it was made, we know it, and who made it, and wonder under what circumstances did they are they not harming the environment? Are they not abusing their labor forces, their labor people? So all of that kind of data is centralized around only few players, and it's not possible for the rest of the participants in the supply chain to have an access to that.
Fantastic. I understand that all of this, data are now made available. They are made available to a central authority or a central entity. And that brings me to the point, where we throw blockchain into this whole mix, and, looking at some of how blockchain, can step into these areas and sort of probably provide solutions. What do you think are the potential solutions, if any, to agriculture's or Africa's agricultural crisis?
So the first solution, we have to look at improving our operations, like availing farming equipment for the small-scale farmers, improving their participation within the supply chain, also kind of democratizing their farming knowledge. If you look at the previous farming generation, they were passing their knowledge from generation to generation, and now we need more farmers. So there's that big knowledge gap. That's why we see about 45% of food being lost before it gets to the shelves, because the knowledge of farming, the equipment, and the utilization of smart farming as well. And the second solution will be around optimizing our supply chain, transparency, so that we have see-through supply chain, minimizing inequalities within supply chain, and the last one is improving financial inclusion for the small-scale farmers, so that they can be able to contribute and participate better, because currently their lands are not registered, so they don't have a leverage of assets to get financial services, for example, in order to scale their farming and produce more and produce better.
Pretty, is blockchain the final solution?
Well, blockchain on its own is not a silver bullet. We often say that the community is as critical as the technology to facilitate trade between the communities. So from governments to and everybody within the supply chain needs the participation. However, one of the most contribution that blockchain can do, for example, we spoke about improving farming operations. The blockchain technology can avail a platform of which the community that belong in that platform can tokenize assets. We can see 10 families, 100 families owning same assets instead of owning assets individually. So now they put their monies together, tokenize their assets, and being able to have farming assets on demand instead of owning it by themselves, but they will have that access. And the second one is that supply chain. Blockchain is a very great collaboration tool, because right now what we're seeing, all these small-scale farmers are scattered everywhere, but when they belong on one platform, think about 1,000 farmers being on one platform, having it's a collective bargaining tool. They can have collective production output, then they can compete with the commercial farmer to be able to have their produce being represented on mainstream retail. And lastly, within the financial inclusion, their land, if it's tokenized, it now becomes an asset. Their equipment becomes an asset that they can leverage to get more financing. And by default of blockchain being a ledger, an immutable ledger, they produce those financial records that they need to prove that their business is sustainable. And also when they are a collective, they can secure bigger contracts, because that is key as well, to be trusted with more investments to be able to expand.
Okay, beautiful. Now, I believe, as you've just highlighted, how the blockchain technology, can solve this solution, or this challenges rather. That is what you are doing at Coronet Blockchain. Just before I let you go right there, Pretty, can you just help us touch, some of the things that we are seeing happen within the Coronet Blockchain?
So the Coronet Blockchain, our first use case is within the beauty sector, but the similar capabilities are being able to be evolved to take care of agriculture. The first thing we do is to ensure the quality of products from the source, whether it was a seed or it was a material that we avail for the product to be made, the process of making the product according to what makes the product to qualify as the quality standard that is needed, whether it's a tomato, whether it's a hair product, or any other kind of a product where quality means safety, means we need to certify the quality. And the second thing, we prioritize access to markets, making sure that small-scale farmers or salons have an access to the African market. Like on the salon side, we've got 24 million consumers. So we are building single platform of transaction to ensure that they immediately, if you want to start this kind of a business, immediately you tap into the access to market, you tap into good product, and all you do is to just manage your business instead of spending loads of money going to source products, because there is no technology or scientific way of telling that the product, it is what it says it is, what is outside the box is what is inside the box. So the same principles applies in agriculture, they applies in minerals, they apply in pharmaceuticals as well.
Okay, thank you so much, Preeti, for speaking with us on the program. At this point, I have to let you go.